Hey, this is Ryan Steele, and you're listening to the Give and Go podcast.
Welcome to the Give and Go basketball podcast. I am your host, Mitch Shreve, along with two of the smartest basketball minds I know, Ryan Steele, Ben Sperry. As we're recording this right now, we are actually in the middle of Game 5 of the Clippers-Suns. They just started the third quarter. Clippers are only up 3, 59-56, and that's what's kind of guide our discussion today. And we're going to talk a little bit about the legacy of players, or I should say the future legacy of players. And I'm going to pass it off to Ben to give a little better definition of explanation of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so I think what we wanted to do with this episode is discuss like where are our perceptions of these players, both in terms of the pecking order in the NBA right now, but even their legacy in terms of comparisons to players of other generations and times and places historically. So, we're going to talk about various, big time players and also guys that aren't superstars right now, and just talk about maybe even some coaches and whether or not their stock is up as a result of what's gone on in the last couple of weeks, or down, or perhaps the same. And that's how we're going to do it.
I like it. So right now in the middle of this game, let's get started off with kind of an easy one, I guess. But let's talk about Chris Paul and how we think his stock looks now that he has been a part of some fairly decent teams over his career, but just never like everybody thought he had a chance with the Clippers to win a championship, was never able to pull it together. Now he finds himself on the Suns team and has a very legit shot at winning his first championship at the age, I think he's like 35, 36, something like that. So what does this do for his legacy? Do we think his stock's going up or down as a future Hall of Famer?
I mean, look, I think he's been a victim of circumstance throughout his career in a way. I mean, even though those Clippers teams are probably the best teams he's been on, he was just in a loaded West where even the year they beat the Spurs, okay, now it's, the Rockets or the Warriors or, there was always some crazy opponent in the way. It wasn't like they were the clear-cut favorite that he was on. So I'll give him leeway there. He's also missed a ton of important playoff games or had bad important playoff games. So his legacy is basically off of eye test in stats and just knowing he's one of the best point guards. I think if he gets to the finals here, and especially if they win it, that's going to really solidify his legacy as one of the best point guards. Because now you're talking, even if you don't think he's the best player on this team, you're looking at maybe Isaiah, Steph, those short point guards, guys under 6'1", 6'2", that have won championships as like the lead dog. There's not very many. It was more center based and wing based throughout this whole NBA history here. Iverson took a team to the finals, but like this would solidify him. Something Stockton never did as good teams he was on. So I think it solidifies his legacy. I don't think his stock is really up or down.
Yeah.
I think he just is where he is in history.
Yeah, I was going to say he's trending up, but it's not necessarily like he's going up a lot. It's not like it's a huge boom market here for him yet.
Right.
And I think, part of the reason it's not going up more is that he was awesome in the Nuggets series, but then he misses more games here in the conference finals because of the COVID protocols. And he hasn't been that great so far in the moments he's played in these games. So, obviously this could all change even just tonight. Like, say he has a huge second half and gets into the finals. But I think what would really vault him historically, and this is fair or not, because I'm with you on Chris Paul being one of the greatest point guards of all time regardless, is if he is like a finals MVP. If he plays at the level of finals MVP and they win, his stock goes up, I think, to the point where people do say, like I've already been saying, that he's in the Mount Rushmore point guards, maybe top 2 or 3 of all time. And whether that's fair or not is another question, but I think that's where his legacy goes if he has an awesome NBA Finals, presuming they get there.
I I like that. All right.
Hold on, and just one more little point to that.
Yeah.
And like how you said,
You do it,
I'm
man.
gonna be,
you do it.
I'm gonna be bringing this up throughout this legacy talk. Is how you just said he's the same player whether they win this championship or not, and that's kind of gonna be my theme here. With bad breaks or whatever, or bad seeding changes legacies, but they're still the same player. So go ahead and we'll talk about that throughout.
Let's stick with the Suns because there's another interesting name. Let's talk about Cameron Payne here. A guy who was out of the league for a while and kind of bounced around, and all of a sudden now is kind of with those first few games in this series with Paul being out, took over kind of the lead point guard duties and has just been killing it.
Yeah. Was he out of the league? I thought he was on benches. He's a dance partner for Russell Westbrook back in the day.
I'm pretty sure he spent a season or two overseas. Let me just double check that real quick.
At least one.
Just to make sure I have my facts straight here, but I'm pretty sure he went overseas for a couple seasons.
He was like a Shanghai snake or something.
Yeah.
Shark. They're sharks.
But while I'm looking that up, what do we think about him? Is his stock going up? Is he going to be now a guy that is going to stay in the league or maybe get a contract when he's up?
So here's the thing. I think his stock's going up, but if I was buying or selling, I might hold this one for the short sale. And what I mean by that, to put it in layman's terms, is I think this stock's going to go up real high because of his performance in this playoffs, but there's potential here that it comes way back to earth in a different, whether he goes to a different team, gets a big contract or something, or the scenario is different for him going forward. I think it's an easier position to be in to be Chris Paul's backup than it will be for him to be a full-time NBA point guard.
And I think his stock is very volatile, meaning I think he doesn't have enough credibility to where if Chris Paul had 4 or 5 straight bad games, you're not going to be like, oh, he's a bum. Like, he has so much cachet built up. If Cam Payne plays like shit the rest of this playoffs into the finals, okay, never mind. Like, he's back to Cam Payne. If he continues to play like he has, yes, his stock will stay relatively high for Cam Payne. He will be, getting contract offers to be a backup point guard, probably in the right role. I think he'd be good as if Denver lost like Monty Morris or a team like that plays a little bit up-tempo, that plays his kind of style, that would be the right fit. It's got to be right fit for Cam, but I think he has caught on, and the Suns will probably re-sign him, honestly. I mean, I don't see why not. This guy's giving you a lot, so he's at least earned himself a contract when you didn't know if he would or not throughout this playoffs.
So let's head to another Chris Paul-esque player in the fact that has been a part of pretty decent teams over his career, but just never brought home a championship. And he's actually playing in this game here. How about Paul George? Ben, I'm pretty sure it was you before we started recording. You said you had some pretty interesting thoughts about Paul George and where he'd stand legacy-wise. What do you think?
Yeah, so with Paul George, I mean, you remember this guy wasn't necessarily thought to be a superstar right away when he came in the league. He became what looked like a budding superstar in Indiana. He actually went toe-to-toe with LeBron, and we kind of forget this because he was really good in OKC in the regular season, and then they got beat in the playoffs early. He's had some kind of rough playoff outings or big moments. He wasn't very good. So his stock wasn't particularly high as a playoff performer, but he's been great in a lot of these playoff games this year. The fact that they've been as competitive as they have been without Kawhi, with his second and third players often being, a Morris twin and Reggie Jackson, speaks volumes about how good he's been for the Clippers and carrying this far. So I think his stock's way up. And it does help him historically. And maybe it should, or maybe it shouldn't, I don't know. Because he was really good like this before in certain moments. But I think his stock's back to where it used to be when we saw him dunking all over the Heat with the Indiana Pacers.
Agreed. I think his stock is up. I just think the reason why his stock might not be up in some people's eyes is he's just easy to make fun of. Just for, reasons of his past, you don't got to bring them all up. But this stuff he's gotten into away from the court and everything, he's just easy kind of to pick on, and he dubbed himself Playoff P, and then played like, crap. I mean, so he's just easy to pick on, I feel like, and people just take that shot. But I mean, he's easily top 15 player in the league right now. I mean, he's a dog, so his stock rate is right where it should be.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's head to on the other side into the East a little bit here, and let's talk about where like a player like Giannis is at, and alongside with his counterpart Chris Middleton. Let's talk about those two guys, because I think they have an interesting dynamic, and especially with the way he played last night. But Chris Middleton is making a big case for himself, being a lead dog somewhere, maybe here in the future, instead of being the kind of the sidekick. But what do you guys think about that? Or am I just talking out of turn here?
Well, it's not really talking out of turn. It's just what the playoffs do to people. They do this to seasoned journalists who cover the NBA for 20 years, where from night to night, a guy's a bum, then he's the best. He's washed, then he's back. As being a Heat fan, I watched it for 2 straight years with D Wade. Oh, his knees are broken. He can't do anything. Oh, he scores 28 in the finals game and they win. It's just night to night, things change. And Chris Middleton could go out the next night and go 3 for, 17. He's a shooter, man. Some nights some shots fall. I think Chris Middleton is who he is. I think at this point in his career, I think if Chris Middleton's your best player, you're a 7 or 8 seed and you're going to get knocked out in the first round. Because if you're relying on tough mid-range contested jump, look at DeMar DeRozan. Do we think he's better than DeMar DeRozan, overall as a player? I mean,
he doesn't have the explosiveness, but he can shoot threes at least.
He can shoot threes, exactly. Yeah. But a lot of his game comes from contested mid-range jumpers. I mean, trust me, the Heat just played him 2 years in a row. I'm very well versed in this Milwaukee Bucks team. I think if he's your best player, you're an 8 seed. If he's your second best player, hey, now you got a chance at the title depending on who the guy is. As far as Giannis goes, look, man, he's clearly the best player left, or should be, as far as accolades and his height goes. He is the best players, now that Kawhi is out, left in these playoffs. So you got the best player with probably the most healthy, best roster left in the playoffs, and you got more experience than the Hawks, Suns, and probably the Clippers. You got the most experience in the playoffs, so his legacy is the one that's going to take the hit if they don't win.
Yeah.
The Hawks, like I've been saying for weeks and weeks, this is just cake. This is icing. This is beautiful for them. They're just learning so much day by day. Trae Young's, sharpening his fangs every day out. The Clips don't have their main guy. The Suns are looking good, but Giannis has to win this. He has to win it. So his legacy is to be determined to me during this playoffs. He's got stuff to prove. Middleton, to me, just has to be him, man. You just got to be there to bail Giannis out nights he needs help. You got to be that sidekick.
So I agree, and I actually want to pose this. It's at least finals or bust for Giannis right now in terms of how people perceive.
Absolutely.
It might even be championship or bust, but I'd be willing. It has to be at least finals or bust. And the reason I say that is he won 2 straight MVPs. He won Defensive Player of the Year and MVP in the same year, putting him in very, very rare company. It's only Jordan and Akeem. But there's still this feeling, and I've even felt it myself watching him play, that he's not really the guy in a playoff series. He's not really the best player in those big moments. And we've seen this not only with 2 straight playoffs, but as stupid as it sounds, he looked like crap playing for Greece, I thought, a couple years ago, right? This matters, right? If you're supposed to be the best player in the world, you got to carry your team further than that, right? And not get shut down by somebody that's not even in the NBA. Right. So, I feel for Giannis to get not just be even, because I feel it just keeps him even to win right now. He needs to get at least to the finals to trend up, and he might have to win the finals to truly be going up in terms of stock right now. Because if you're going to make the case to being the best player in the world, you got to win. You got to win.
Here's my thing about him again: 2-time MVP. I've noticed this about him the past couple games that I've watched him. Think about who you want taking your shot game 7, 5 seconds left. Who do you want who do you want the ball, have the ball in their hands? And
Mario Chalmers.
Yeah, well, bingo. Yeah, no doubt.
Whoever's open is probably the answer. But
with Giannis, like you said, Ben, the guy who's trying to be the best player in the world, I don't know if I want him taking the last shot when it's on a line. I think I want Middleton taking that shot. You know what I mean? Like you look at all the top teams in the league, like the Suns. Who do you want? Devin Booker. You want Booker taking that shot. You obviously Kawhi Leonard taking it for the Clips, but like in this case,
to
you
me,
want
though,
PG3.
That's a super old school and antiquated way to look at a player's worth, because that's almost saying like for 47 minutes he could be by far the best player, but in a 7-second scenario, we're just washing away what he did for 48 minutes.
Right.
And depending how much time's left, if you're a coach worth a damn, you get him to his spot. He doesn't have to take a pull-up mid-range or a step-back three.
Yeah.
Like, get him going to his spot so he can post up. So if the double comes, now he has to make a play. Now,
or maybe even put him in pick and roll or something. But
Right, put him in pick and roll. That'll be the screener. Put him in a different million actions. But I agree with you. Your sentiment of, okay, who would I rather taking your typical end of the game dribble jumper, game winner? Yes, obviously. But that's like saying, there's probably a million of those,
Well, the best example, and this is who he is Shaq, right? Shaq was by far the most dominant player in the NBA in the early 2000s, but you still didn't give him the ball with the game on the line.
Because if he got fouled, you lose.
You would just foul him, right? You would just foul him. And he doesn't really he's not a multi-level scorer. He's a one-level scorer. Well, Giannis is like a 1.25 level scorer. I want him to go with 2, right? He can go a little bit further out than Shaq. He drives into a lot of what he does. So he's a different player in Shaq, but he's almost the evolutionary Shaq. Like he's very much a guy that's going to the rim and finishing at the cup and dunking on you until you stop it. And that's who he is.
To me, that's his biggest asset, though. Yeah. I think his biggest asset offensively, outside of dunking and driving, is he caves in your defense so much it allows shooters to be great, because he's a freight train out of hell, and you just have to try to slow him down. So you just commit bodies, and now Connaughton, Drew Holiday, Middleton, Lopez, they're all open, That's his biggest asset, just caving into defenses,
and he's freaking length. He's so long. All right, before we hop into a break here, I'm gonna lump this next group of people, and you can talk about all 3 of these group of people. And if you guys want to add a name of your own to it, but I'm gonna call these guys the rising superstars. Hey. And just talk about these, and I have 3 of them for you. These 3 legacies. We kind of already touched on a couple of them, but get a little more in depth. But Donovan Mitchell, Devin Booker, and Trae Young.
Actually, let me add this one. Let me add Luka.
DeAndre Ayton.
Not even, though you could argue talk about him too. I want to put Luka in the mix, and I want to talk about Booker versus Mitchell, and then I want to talk about Trae versus Luka for a variety of reasons. But yes, that's the ones I want to compare.
Go ahead.
Go for it. Get it.
So what I'd say is before the season started, and even most of the regular season, I think Donovan Mitchell's stock was extremely high. He was awesome last year's playoffs, even though they lost early. And then, the Utah Jazz is the best team in the league this year in terms of their record. I think coming into the playoffs, Donovan Mitchell's stock is probably a little bit higher than Devin Booker's.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to say Devin Booker's washed him now and is way above him, but I think they at least achieved parity in this playoffs, and Devin Booker's probably edged in front of Donovan Mitchell for a lot of people in terms of perception. And that's not trying to be prisoner of the moment. I think they're not the same player. I'm not trying to say that, but they're even in impact, it feels like right now. And maybe Booker just gives you a little bit more in terms of maybe creating for others, maybe a little bit bigger as a guard. But it's very close. And I want to see what your thoughts were on that.
No, I mean, I think we all knew scoring-wise what Booker gave you, but we've seen so many guys throughout the history of the NBA who were just top-flight scorers, and either it was because they were in a terrible organization and just couldn't get to the playoffs, they had no help, or they just scored almost like Kyrie a little bit. Kyrie can score and score and score, but if he's your main guy, you don't go nowhere. You're just you're stuck in the mud, you're an 8 seed, you don't make the playoffs. It's like that. I didn't know if Booker was going to be that guy. And I think part of what hurt him was going to one of the worst organizations. Other than the Wizards, like they were one of the worst ran organizations throughout the last decade. After post Nash, Stoudemire, Marion, after that they were terrible. He goes into that with nobody around him. Now you see, hey, James Jones comes in competent, gets him some help. They draft DeAndre Ayton. They put Chris Paul in there. They go before that they go 8-0 in the bubble, kind of a little springboard into this year. And now you see, hey, this dude can make plays. Oh, Chris Paul ain't out there. Okay, 40-point triple-double. I got this. And that has more to do with usage rate than anything. But I would tend to agree. I would put Book. I don't even know, man. It's almost like we're slighting Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
This dude, what is he, 4th leading scorer points per game in playoff history right now? And he's
right. Yeah.
What are we talking about? You know what I'm saying? This is ridiculous. Yeah. These two dudes are so good that I don't know who I could pick who's better, honestly.
I would say though that both their stocks gone up. And they're both on the cusp of stardom, if not superstardom at this point.
And it sucked that Donovan got hurt and Conley was hurt because but dude, I would have liked to see that. It would have been cool to see Mitchell and Booker, go head to head in this series. That would have been cool. But hey, you got to finish it out. Same with Booker here. Y'all got to finish it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now the other one I want to talk about.
Your Luka and Trey one?
Yeah, and the reason I wanted to bring that one up is because, they're in the same draft. They get traded for one another. Look, everybody thought that was highway robbery after Luka's first 2 seasons, right? It looks like Luka Doncic is going to be an all-time great. I mean, it's early in his career, so don't get me wrong, things could change. But Luka Doncic, even in his 2 playoff losses in the first round or whatever, has looked like that guy.
Best young player since LeBron.
Yes, legitimately can make
Without
the case.
Without a doubt.
There's never been anybody at his age is this good, except for maybe you could argue LeBron and Magic and Larry Bird, right? Maybe Mike. Well, then Trae Young comes out and he's in the conference finals playing with ginormous balls. If the ref doesn't injure him, you're looking at a possibility that they're up 2-1 right now. And he's amazing. He puts up – he plays like a weird, slightly smaller yet, but bizarro Steph Curry, Dame Lillard type player. I don't know. He is like them. He's different, don't get me wrong, but he's kind of like them. The continued evolution of the game of basketball. He shoots from super far out. He handles the ball. He gets everybody else baskets. It's hard to say that they made the wrong choice in a way. Now, I think this is my answer that maybe the Hawks would be even better if they kept Doncic? Yes, I think that. But if you're an Atlanta fan, I don't know if you do think that.
Atlanta fans, hell no. There ain't no way that you would say you'd rather that's your guy. You've been ass as an organization forever. And this dude has you a few games away from the finals in his 3rd season. I mean, look, he's killing dudes. This is his 3rd season. We didn't see Steph get far in the playoffs this early. And I know he had injuries and stuff, but he was compared to Steph as soon as he came to Oklahoma. As soon as he got to college, that was the comparison once people saw how he played. And to come in the league off of Steph being a champion and an MVP, and those are your expectations, that's tough, man. Yeah. Luka didn't have those expectations, dude. He had to live up to you're a Euro player. Oh, you're one of those guys. Let's see if he pans out or if he flops. So he had something to live, but he had lofty expectations, and he's living up to them. So I do agree, but I think Luka's obviously better. He's taller, he's bigger, he can, shoot from deep too. He sees over the defense better. But man, Trae is such a dog, and he's only getting better. And even if they lose, I think they are going to lose this series, and they could win. I've been wrong every step of the way except for the first series, but this is so important for them. Take these lumps and get these playoff games under their belt. And my little add-in, because you brought up, the same draft, was DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah,
I think he's the one guy, because bigs aren't looked at, and he's almost like a true big as far as He doesn't shoot threes. He doesn't really dribble a lot. He's more mid-range, post-game, offensive rebound, stuff like that. Super athletic. I think the Suns almost feel probably validated that he's 19 and 20 in a Western Conference Finals game this young. Now, obviously, do I think he's better than Luka or Trey? No, I don't. I think they're more important players right now. But you have Devin Booker there. You only have one ball. I think he might fit with the team better than maybe Luka or Trey would.
They're probably coming out feeling like they didn't make a mistake either. And I think that's fair. I mean,
like
at the end of the day, Trey
down the perimeter, like he can move well, like he does everything well for them, and he's still young. So,
and at the end of the day, the Atlanta Hawks and Trey Young and DeAndre Ayton and the Suns are still playing while Luka's at home. So, I guess for granted they're early in their careers and there's still a lot that can happen, but that's going to be a good enough argument, I think, for those that support those teams right now.
Well, hey, as always, let us know what you think in the comments below. We're going to go ahead and take a real quick break. And then when we come back, we have a lot more up and down stocks to talk about. This is the Give and Go Basketball Podcast. Stick around. We'll be right back. Thanks for listening to the Give and Go Basketball Podcast. Welcome back to the Give and Go Basketball Podcast. Mitch Shreve, along with Ryan Steele and Ben Sperry. Before we went into break, we were talking about legacies of players and the effect of this playoff series this season on their stock, whether their stock goes up and down. So continuing with that, we're gonna talk more about some teams who have been eliminated. I think most notably though is the Nets from Brooklyn. And with some of their, superstars that they had on that team and what this playoff and season did to their stock. So the four we're going to talk about is Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Blake Griffin. Stocks up and down on those four. Go ahead, whoever's ready.
I'm going to go in reverse order. I think for Blake, his stock's up because I think he was almost at zero. At one point, he looked completely washed for Detroit, but he was actually a very productive and useful player for the Nets in this playoffs. So I think his stock's up. I mean, it's not ever going to get to where it was at one point when he was one of the best players in the league. But, he's still a very good basketball player, has a lot of skills. I think for Kyrie and Harden, I'd both put them at stock neutral. And I'd say that because I think the injuries, while they don't give them a complete pass, they make it understandable why they weren't bigger contributors in this playoffs. And quite frankly, I think Harden's stock wasn't necessarily as high as it could be or should be maybe based on playoff performances anyways. So I think that really leaves Durant as the interesting discussion and where I'd focus this. And I'd love to hear Steele's thoughts, including if they're any different than the other guys, because I think Durant's stock should be at least a little bit up, but I could see some arguing that his stock automatically goes down if he doesn't get to at least, the finals and win it as well. So I'd like to hear your thoughts.
So I'll cover KD last. Blake obviously agreed. He looked like a corpse in Detroit. He didn't dunk for a season and a half almost, and then he comes back. He's dunking on people in the playoffs. He's having big playoff games, rebounding his ass off, playing pretty good defense against Giannis. I mean, he seemed like he's a guy you can trust again, like where you almost wrote him off in Detroit. You can trust him again. He might not be an all-star, but he's definitely a pretty good player in the league still. Kyrie continues to be injured over and over again in big playoff series. I hate to blame it on a guy. It's really not his fault. He just got injured. But obviously, he can't be up. I mean, as good as he played this year, I think that should be more what we talk about than just him getting injured, because he was having a pretty good series too. Yeah. He had a pretty good series when they lost. So again, I would agree neutral. Same with Harden. The interesting one for me, Durant. His stock shouldn't necessarily be up. He is who he is. Arguably the best player in the league for the last few years. Like he was on one of the best teams we've ever seen. He was the best player on that team.
Yeah.
And now I think his stock's only up in people's eyes because we've never seen him have to play in the playoffs without another, top dog or a few top dogs. Like, I think he maybe had one playoff series where Russ might have been hurt, or maybe Russ was hurt during the season that year. He came back.
Yeah, that was I think his MVP year.
His MVP year. Russ came back for the playoffs, though, I think. So he's never really had to do it without guys. So I don't know if people just didn't think he couldn't play that well and do these things. I mean, I thought we should know this by now about him. So I don't think his stock should be up or down.
Yeah.
I think he's just one of the greatest players we've ever seen, and that's kind of what he showed. To me, at least, that's what he showed.
I agree with you. I don't think, I think when we talk about stock, it is the people's perceptions rather than what's really the case. And I think it breaks down to two different groups. One actually probably respects him more because he did it without help, whatever that means, and almost pulled it off. But there's going to be others that say, if you're supposed to be the guy that's taking the mantle from LeBron as the best player in the world, or if you're competing with Giannis for that mantle right now, you got to win. And, since you didn't do that, you get demoted a little bit.
For sure.
I could see it both ways in that one.
For sure. I will say this, and this is like one reason why some of the legacy stuff is funny to me and almost like comical, because if KD didn't literally have on clown shoes and had on a size 16 or 17, we're talking about Giannis is a bum, Budenholzer's fired.
Oh, he's already been fired. Yep.
He's already been fired. They probably already hired a new coach. KD's the greatest. Kyrie's going to be back for the next series, like all this. Instead, this much of a shoe changes everything. That's silly to me. That's a joke to me.
Yeah.
That's how we calculate and measure these things. And
no, you're 100% right. If that's the game winner.
And even the Trae Young stuff.
Yeah.
Let's just say, because it came down to the wire in the East for the seeding. The Heat were almost ahead of the Hawks. It was like a half game or a game at the end of that season where they were 4 and 5 and 6 were right there. Let's say the Hawks finished 6th and the Heat finished 5th, and they play the Knicks first, and the Hawks got to play the Bucks first, and they get beat in the first round. It looks like they're going to get beat against the Hawks this series, and the Heat beat a Knicks team who is kind of sorry, and maybe it's just like these little things, like these little meetings and foot's on the line, and guy is injured. They just take away people's legacies, and to me that's silly because these players are who we know them to be. If that makes sense. A little long-winded, but it's just how I feel.
It's a game of inches. Let's go to the one of the hotter topics around, and that's Ben Simmons, who just announced today that he informed Australia that he will not be playing for them in the Olympics. Instead, he's going to stay here and work on his development as a player.
Allows Patty Mills to be the playoff or the Olympic GOAT again. So it's okay.
So what do we think about Ben Simmons stock? Up, down, neutral?
Okay.
So
go ahead.
I mean, it's in a pretty steady recession, I would say. It's gone way down. And I mean, is it fair? I don't know, because he still brings a lot to the table, but I don't know how much more a stock could have dropped in one series than Ben Simmons did.
Well, it's down because obviously they were going to include him in a trade for James Harden, wouldn't do it because he was that, highly valued to them. That's how high his stock is necessarily. You won't include him in a trade for an MVP. Now you're talking about trading him for CJ McCollum, who's not even an all-star. I like CJ McCollum. He's a good player, man, but we're talking about a number 1 overall pick and, a guy that we thought was going to, trust the process. He was going to come in with Embiid and they're going to take it over.
Now, to be
This
fair,
is
you
where
would get more than that. It would probably be CJ McCollum plus other things, or probably something else. If you are trading him, he will get a haul. But I think it's significantly less than it would have been before the playoffs started.
But here's what I don't like. People like us, gas bags, people who sit on their couch and drink beer and eat wings and watch these games and don't do any exercising or whatever, they would tell you that Ben Simmons doesn't try and, he clearly doesn't work on his game. Like, I guarantee that dude shoots so many free throws and so many three-pointers in his downtime and in practice time. Like Shaq in practice, they said, shot like 80 to 90% from the foul line. They said his shot was even different. There's just something about they can't do that when the game's on. Like, they just can't do it. Like, so I don't know, man. I hate that we just put this thing up like, so now he almost adds to it now. I'm going to stay back from Team Australia and work on my game. Like, I don't know. I'd rather him just like Giannis. He's like shooting 17% from three in the playoffs, but at least he's shooting, man. At least he's like, trying everything he can. I'd rather see Ben Simmons shoot and miss sometimes and just never take one. Because to me, that's more selfish than anything, that you won't even take a shot.
Right. And Scottie Pippen, his stock is probably also going down for other reasons. I actually said something like that recently. He said, the difference between Simmons and Giannis right now is that Giannis doesn't care if he misses. He'll airball a free throw and then keep going to the basket and getting fouled anyways. Whereas Simmons is literally scared. And we'll stop shooting altogether.
That was funny. All right, moving on. Let's go back to the MVP race between Embiid and Jokic. Where do their stocks lie? What's their legacy looking like as the two MVP? Jokic winning the MVP, Embiid being a close second, and then both of them getting ousted before the conference finals.
I think they both got let down by their teams.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they both, statistically wise, they put up their average or better than their average, and they played like they should have.
And I'll say this too: Embiid did it with a torn meniscus, I believe, is what he had.
Right, he was banged up for sure, and still was out there, doing his thing. And he got let down by his coach and sidekick and shooters, and really, I mean, Jokic, I think, knew the deal without Jamal being there. And then having guys who were super young or super new to the squad, like, they just both didn't have the guns, like almost like KD. They just didn't have enough around them to get the job done. Now, I will say where Jokic didn't really have any bad quarters really or halves. Maybe he had a few bad possessions. But Embiid, I will say this. If you go 0 for 12 or 0 for 13 in a second half of a playoff game where you lose in dramatic fashion, that one has to stick to him a little bit. Even though he's hurt, I get it. You're hurt. But 0 for 12 is bad, man. Like,
yeah, and blowing some big leads, too.
Like if you're the man on a team and you're the guy that they go to get buckets, you got to be the calming force in that. Like, so if you're
plus you're the
20
favorite.
Point lead, you're the favorite.
Yeah, like Denver's not the favorite in that series going in at all, but Philly is. And, I think first together, I think even though I don't think each of the individual stocks hurt necessarily by the outcome, it hurts the center stock a little bit. Ayton's still doing really good out there, but the Clippers play without a center, right? Giannis isn't really a center, but he's kind of the center for the Bucks. They're kind of weird, so there's not really a center there. In Atlanta, they have a roll man center in Clint Capella. Like, it's really no centers left aside from Ayton in terms of like a guy that will actually post up, play basket, and you can play off of him. And even Ayton, you don't really do that. So I think it hurts.
Lopez will if the right matchup is available.
Yes, but generally he parks his ass outside the 3-point line right now. So
because they're dumb.
Yeah.
I've
he's amazing in the post, and they don't go to him enough when he has mismatches.
No, and he's had quite a few that I've seen that they don't take advantage of. But that's neither here nor there.
But nonetheless, I was going to say I feel like the stock for the return of the center has gone down a little bit as a result of Jokic and Embiid losing early.
Yeah. Let's get into some coaches, and you guys can kind of pick and choose which coaches you want to talk about because there's a lot of them. Let's talk about coaching stocks, ups and downs, with some of the different coaches that are currently still in the playoffs and currently have exited.
To me, there's two big ones. One on the rise, one on the decline. I think on the rise, Ty Lue, man, continues. You know, it was almost a Joe. He's just winning because of LeBron or whatever. But he has one of the, if not, I think the best record in closeout games and elimination games. He's only lost a few in his whole career. Without Kawhi, I mean, they could easily be win. They're winning this game with 3 minutes left by double digits. And if they don't lose on a fluky, alley-oop inbounds, like they could be up 3-2 and on their way to winning this series without Kawhi. On the other hand, with Doc Rivers, you have all the talent, you have all your guys, healthy. I mean, Embiid was injured a little bit, but he was out there. He was playing. And Tobias is healthy, Ben is healthy, and you lose another playoff series when you're the more favored team. I think Doc's got to be stocked down, even though probably people in the league won't say it. I did.
And then I would say, along with that, we've already said this, Coach Bud, his stock is, I mean, maybe you can call it volatile, but I think he would have been fired had they lost to, the Nets. I think he'd get fired if he lost to the Hawks. I think if he gets out coached in the finals, if they get there, he gets fired as well. He's in a tough spot, even with success right now, which is that's a tough spot to be in as a coach.
Yeah, and no, really, I want to talk about him because he's an interesting one because they've continually been so good every year. Like they've been top of the East, whether 1, 2, or 3 seed.
And he was really good with the Hawks before that, right?
And he was great with the Hawks when they had that 50-some win team.
60 wins, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, 60-win team, right. And, Millsap and Kyle Korver and all them and no really superstars. And then he gets some superstars, so you're thinking, okay, he'll get the job done. And they just keep losing, series you expect them to win. And it usually looks like it's his fault.
Yeah.
Sometimes you watch it and you're like, man, that guy can't buy a shot. He's just missing a but sometimes it just looks like it's his fault. So I think that's why he gets critiqued.
Yeah, and I think we've done this ourselves. When it appears to be that your strategy is giving up something easy to the other team, or not putting your own players in a position to make it easier on them, that's when you start to wonder with coaches. Shots going in or not could happen.
Right.
But when it seems like you stick to a strategy, even when it appears to be costing you,
don't make adjustments from
to the
right. next. Whereas, is tough sometimes in game, but one game to the next in a playoff series, you gotta adjust.
Right. And I think one of the things, and we've talked about this, we talked about it last week, but Ty Lue has had this ability to adjust his lineups game to game, series to series, that has helped them be competitive, even when it looked like they're on the brink of elimination. Against Dallas, the decision to go basically 5 out. He's toggled lineups. He's brought in DeMarcus Cousins at moments and just let him play bully ball for minutes at a time. He's gotten more out of guys that were thought to be cast-offs, like Reggie Jackson, Marcus Morris, Nick Batum. Than I think a lot of people would have gotten out of them. He's figured out ways to make his team be successful, even when it looks like they're overmatched.
Dude, Paul George is going absolutely hammer.
Yeah, it's appearing as if the Clippers will win Game 5 here. Just real quick before we wrap things up, any individuals you guys think we didn't talk about a lot or miss that you just want to give a real quick up or down to?
I would say those types of guys, like the Reggie Jackson stock has to be way up right now.
Yeah.
You know, he's been
Right,
awesome.
Ben's right. There's a ton of ancillary guys that
Yeah.
like that you know, Kevin Huerter for the Hawks or
Kayvon.
Yeah.
right, when he plays like Kayvon and not Kevin. Even like, I mean, John Collins, I mean, if you're a fantasy basketball player, you know he's a fantasy kind of guy. Like, he's been a good player. He's been their second best player, but to see him do it in the playoffs against top talent, I think his stock's up. I mean, basically, if you win the playoffs and you're not playing like shit, your stock's going to be up, basically.
All right, final thoughts then, real quick, Steele. What do you got for me?
If the Bucks aren't real dumb, they'll win the East, and they should be favorites as long as they're healthy to win it all. If they don't win, Budenholzer will be fired. Hot take. And then I have low-key been rooting for the Suns. But man, this Clippers team, like, I don't know. I made this comment before we came on, you know, and started recording that I've been more impressed with the teams who are losing these series and the teams that are winning because they just seem undermanned and they're fighting their ass off. Like the Clippers to be down 3-2 and have just two really close games just go against them. Like, man, without Kawhi, they're so close to winning this series. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Ben, final thoughts?
You know, we still don't know what's going on with Kawhi. It's kind of been shrouded in some mystery.
He's done.
I think that's been our intuition is that he's actually hurt bad enough that he won't come back. But it is notable that the Clippers are on the brink of being a finals team, at least potentially here, without their best player. And if Kawhi was, it leaves you with one of those what-if seasons. Like if Kawhi was healthy, it looks like the Clippers would be the favorite to win it all right now.
Agreed.
And that's crazy to think about because it looked like Luka Doncic was about to bury their ass through one half of Game 3 in the first round.
Right.
And now, you know, you could say that the Clippers would potentially missed a chance to be the NBA champion because of an injury.
Well, hey, as always, let us know if we missed anybody that you want to, know what we think about their stocks up or down, or if there's anybody you think want to, shout out and say up or down. As always, like us, follow us, subscribe to us. Doesn't take much. Go and click that little button on your screen. Hey, this has been another episode of the Give and Go podcast. We'll see you next time.
I'm Ben Sperry, and this was the Give and Go Basketball Podcast.